Here it is, the moment you never knew you were waiting for. For this episode only, your hosts are the guests. So grab a drink and a snack as we bring you Gero Nurses, Tales from the Front. Enjoy.
Greetings and welcome to the inaugural podcast of Gero Nurses, Tales from the Front. My name is Darren Blakeborough, and I am an assistant professor in the School of Culture, Media, and Society at the University of the Fraser Valley. I am also not your regular host for this podcast. After this episode, I will slink back into the darkness and work as the audio engineer for this podcast. So, why am I hosting the very first episode then? That is an amazingly astute question. The answer is that your regular hosts for Gero Nurses are, in fact, the first guests for this podcast. They are here to talk about themselves and their backgrounds in the field of gerontological nursing and to discuss exactly why they wanted to do this podcast and what they hope to achieve. So I hope that answers your first question, and I hope that our illustrious hosts and guest will answer any others that you may have. So let me introduce you to these amazing ladies. First is Dr. Lillian Hung, an assistant professor of nursing at the University of British Columbia's School of Nursing. Amongst many other accolades, many of which I'm sure will come up in our discussion today, Lillian is the president of the Gerontological Nurses Association of British Columbia. So welcome, Lillian, to the first episode of your own podcast.
Thank you, Darren, from the dark.
And next, Dr. Shelley Canning, an associate professor in the University of the Fraser Valley's nursing program, and also the coordinator of UFE's Center for Education and Research on Aging. Welcome to you, Shelley.
Welcome back to both of you. I'm excited that we're getting this started.
Yes, as am I. So I guess my first question, I'm just going to get right into this and not picking favorites or anything, but Lillian, I will ask you this first. How did you ultimately end up at this point in your career where you have a focus on aging and older adults? And by all means, feel free to take the long road to the end.
Wow. Of course, when I went into nursing, that I was looking for the same thing like many other people do. I was looking for a stable job that I could, support my family. So when I went into nursing, I wanted to do maternity like many other young people, and wanted to go somewhere that's cool and a lot of acute care skills, and but I didn't have the opportunity. So I have to be honest, gerontological nursing was my second choice. However, when I entered the gerontological nursing, then it was not my second choice anymore. I loved it. I just fell in love with it. That came from the stories and the things that I have witnessed, how some of the nurses, that how they care for the specialized populations. Mostly these people are, they're depressed, they're older, they're frail, they have mental illnesses, and many of them have severe dementia. And I saw how they was able to care for this population with a lot of creative ways. So I was very, very inspired by these people that I met, and many, many amazing, wonderful people. So, I just fell in love with it, and I didn't go anywhere else. And I stayed in the same field for over 20 years. Yeah.
Okay, so I have to ask then, if this was your second choice, what was your first choice when you got into nursing?
That was maternity. I love little babies. Yeah. And I did a practicum, and I got in a bit of trouble too, because I went ahead and do some of the things that I was not supposed to, and I almost got kicked out of nursing.
Yeah, I feel like I should ask what it was that you weren't supposed to do, but maybe I will leave that alone for now.
Well, I'm okay to tell you. It's a little secret. People might want to know the secret. So I was working in a little I was in Winnipeg. I was in a little tiny Victoria General Hospital. On the maternity ward, we were supposed to, follow our mentors, do our practicum. And we're not supposed to, I love skills. At that time, we were just learning how to insert IV. I inserted IV on my own. That's how I got in trouble. Yeah, but I thought it was cool. I was very confident, and there was no problem until I got reported.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Thank you. Shelley, take us through your road to getting into Gero nursing.
So like Lillian, it was not my first choice. And similar to Lillian, I actually wanted women's health. I was a big advocate for all things around women's reproductive rights, an early feminist, I think, in my career. And also like Lillian, I got in trouble too in nursing school. Not for anything skills related. It was a fashion faux pas. My uniform was too short and it was homemade. At that time, I made these little shifts and put a belt on and wore that. So yes, we share a little bit of a common background. So after graduation, I was unlucky in that I wasn't able to work at the Grace, which is now BC Women's, but I did get hired at BC Cancer. And so my focus there was oncology and palliative care. And really what I was doing was caring for mostly older people, because a high percentage of folks with cancer are older. Many people who are at end of life are older, but I never really made the connection to think of myself as invested in aging or gerontological nursing at all. I left that and went to the community. And again, I was working primarily with older people, but just not really making that connection and thinking of myself as a gerontological nurse. We did, though, have Fraser Health had an opportunity for us to write the Gero Nurses certification in the mid-2000s. It was a paid opportunity. And at that point, the penny dropped and I realized that, oh my goodness, I know something about gerontological nursing from my acute care, from my community work. And I love those people. The work has always inspired me. I realized I always gravitated towards the older patient when I was in acute care, those most frail people living in long-term care, especially those with dementia whose staff maybe find hardest to care for. I just felt compelled. And then the last part of my career, I've been teaching at the University of the Fraser Valley, and that teaching has been in gerontological nursing. So supervising students in long-term care, teaching about person-centered care, trying to inspire students so that maybe it becomes a first choice for some new nurses.
Okay, Shell. Well, how long did you actually work in a hospital before making the crossover into the academic part, and why did you make that move?
So I worked in acute or hospital nursing for about 8 years, and then about the same in the community. I think I had always been interested in research as well. And I had moved to Abbotsford, where the University of the Fraser Valley is. And I thought, I could maybe go back to school and get my PhD, do some research. It just felt like an opportunity. And then I got involved in all kinds of different pieces of Gero nursing through that too.
And you've been at UFV now for 15 years, right?
That's right.
And you know how I remember that? Because I have been at UFV for 15 years.
I think we have.
Yeah. And I saw our names listed on the thing because, of course, with COVID, we could not have the general dinner that they have every year for the recipients. Instead, I believe they sent us a nice gift card, and yeah,
That's
I saw
great.
your name on there.
That's right. 15 years.
Okay. How about you, Lillian? How long were you working in a hospital before you crossed over?
Oh, I'm going to have to ask you that question. What did you get? Like 15 years in UFV?
A gift card.
A gift card. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it what?
A $50 gift card for a restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Your question for me was,
How long were you nursing in a hospital before you made the crossover, and why did you make the move into the academic world?
oh my goodness. I didn't start. Well, I started in a psychiatric hospital. It was a hospital, but it didn't feel like a hospital. I started in Riverview Hospital because I came from Manitoba, to British Columbia, like from the rural areas to the urban area. It was really hard to find a job. And so I started to work in the area that I didn't think that I would love, and I ended up really loving it. And that I worked there, and I worked in nursing home and on a very special unit that we have, like people who supposed to be the, with what we call them responsive behaviors. In that time, it was called challenging behavior. People were scared to care for this population. And I loved it. I met really amazing, wonderful people there. And so I never thought I would go to academic, and that was never my goal. And I think my goal to come into nursing was just trying to make a living, Yeah. I never planned to do anything like academic. And I didn't think of research either at that time. And after a while, then I had the opportunity to do a master's degree, because where I worked in that care home, that they built a new building. So I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Then it was very beautiful and nice, and people were talking about environmental design. So I knew that in SFU that they had a department, a gerontology department, that they had a professor there who was very passionate about dementia design. So I went there to try to follow him to see what I can learn from him. And that's how I got into the master's degree. So things were kind of one thing led to the other, but I never actually make any concrete plan, or there's nothing really. Yeah. And I ended up, when I finished my master, then a professor at UBC asked me, oh, would you like to come help us to do some clinical teaching at Lionsgate Hospital? I said, sure. So that's how I got connected with UBC. And then, and then I started to really pick up research, and I did a couple of things. I fell in love with it. This again, like one thing lead to the other, and then I did my PhD, and then and there was opportunity to do a postdoc, and I did that. Yeah, and that's how I end up to be here where I am.
That's fascinating. Yeah, because I mean, there's more than two ways, but most people, you think that you sit down and you go, okay, if I do A, B, and C, then I will end up at D. Whereas you just kind of said, I guess I'll do A, and A led you to B, and led you to C, and led you to D, which is very interesting that it ended up that way. So through all of this, how did the two of you end up meeting one another?
Oh, it was those classes that she brought, the Tim Hortons.
Yeah, we ended up sitting side by side in doctoral courses in the first year of the PhD program at UBC. I took a look at Lillian, and she was super enthusiastic. She was really smart. She had lots of experience, and we just connected.
Remember those Tim Hortons that you drove to UBC and then you would bring us coffee?
Yes. Yeah. And we've been to a lot of conferences together, shared hotel rooms. Lillian's super passionate about food, so she's a great foodie, and I totally am not. I just eat for sustenance, and But so we're just this interesting little mix. I stay up really late and watch the news, and she falls asleep early and then wakes up really early and works out. So, and then we connect. So it's just, it's worked. It's perfect.
Interesting. I couldn't stop thinking too, as you're driving from Abbotsford to UBC, so like at least a 90-minute drive every day. And it makes sense that you would grab some Tim Hortons because you've probably passed 75 or 80 of them on the way there.
Yes. And I would, I had a little notebook and a pen on the passenger seat, and I would drive along, listen to music, and think all things, either research or gerontology or dementia, all the kinds of ideas that I knew we'd be talking about in class, right? And I'd kind of make little notes as we drove along. And that was a great year, and it was just a bonus for me to have Lillian as a friend. You know, she's a colleague first, but now I consider her a really good friend. So yeah, it's great.
That's really nice.
That is so special. I'm getting a little verklempt.
It's been good. It's been good.
So you do your program together. Now you're both doctor nurses, and you go your own separate ways, but you maintain those ties together. So one to UBC, one to UFV. Keeping this connection between you was important. And obviously at some point, one of you said, hey, why don't we do a podcast about nursing in the field of gerontology? So how did that happen?
I guess that was my idea, so I would take the blame. Look at, I see a lot of young people listen to podcasts, and a podcast is a great way to engage people. You can multitask, right? You can be like cooking a dinner, or, doing housework, and you can have your podcast on listening to it. And people driving, people like Shelley, if she drives, and she probably listens to a podcast. And I thought a lot of students love podcasts, and so maybe it's a better way to engage people instead of writing, those boring journal articles and making people to read it. Yeah.
So and I would add that Lillian has been really involved in GNABC, or the Gerontological Nurses Association of BC. And I was involved earlier on in my career. When I first moved out to Abbotsford, I was part of the Fraser Valley chapter. And then, I fell off the wagon, I think. But Lillian kind of got me back in. So now she's got me involved in GNABC again. And when she had the idea for the podcast, and we thought, okay, let's see if we can make a partnership through UFV CIRA, it just felt like, a really great opportunity. And I think the timing this year, it's never lost on me that this, the pandemic has focused a lens on many different things. And it certainly has focused a lens on aging, on people living with dementia, on long-term care. And that is what we do. That is our world and our expertise. And I think it's our time. We have to tell our stories. We have to speak up. And the podcast just came, I think, at the perfect time, Lillian.
Okay,
and I would also add that it gives us the opportunity to talk to nurses. And I think we have a lot of great nurses, and like those people that I have met, amazing people. They're passionate, they have their way to care for older adults, but we don't often get to hear their stories. So they have a lot of tales to tell, I think. But people don't often go to interview nurses, and we hear more about doctors on the news, or when you go to social media, you often see people go ask, other people about their views about, COVID impact and all the other things. But you don't often hear nurses telling their stories, but there's so much rich stories that I think we'll get to hear, from nurses.
Good. And that was my next question. I mean, for anybody that is listening to this right now and listening to you two, they might be thinking to themselves, okay, that's great. I'm really getting to know these two and I like their background and it sounds fascinating. But what are the other episodes going to be about? What is this podcast going to look like as it comes to life?
I think we would like to invite nurses who, because there are so many sides of nursing, and the audience will get to hear nurses that they do their different roles, and people may hear surprises that they didn't think nurses would do that kind of things. And we would also hear like people's stories about how, just like you heard about like secrets of how I came to nursing and trouble that I got into and that type of thing.
And I think, I really agree with Lillian. We have, I think, a unique opportunity right now. And we do hear the voices of physicians. They play a really important role and they partner with us well. We hear a lot from administrators, managers of long-term care, but, the work gets done hour by hour, day by day, by nurses and care aides. There are, we're not the only care providers there, but nurses really play such a pivotal role. And like Lillian says, there are so many of us, and we take on many different roles, but we have a shared identity, and I think just having a chance to kind of amplify that voice. The stories won't all be, people have stories of hardship and difficult times that they've had experienced through their practice, but we are probably a lot more resilient than we think we are, and we rise to the occasion. And I think this is a chance to tell those stories and maybe have some of those new nurses who are all thinking maternity, because as a nursing faculty member, that's where they're at. But, there's a secret power in Gero nursing. Once you're in, you don't get out. You don't leave it, because I can't think of a more rewarding group of people to work with. The need is just so great. And, you've made a difference. It's just so clear you've made such a big difference when you care for these folks and their families. So, yeah, I think I'm excited. I think these podcasts will be very fun to do.
Okay, so for somebody that works as a Gero nurse, that they clearly understand what it means when you say Gero nursing, or what it means to be a Gero nurse. But for someone like myself, or someone that's listening and isn't, entirely familiar with that term, what is all encompassed when you say Gero nurse?
Simple, just working with older adults. And older adults, the term is very broad. It could be what is defined as older. It can be defined as in psychological way, or kind of. And it's very broad. But the simple thing. It's about working with older adults. Yeah, and it's nursing. Yeah,
and I think some of the big areas are certainly long-term care. That's where almost everybody living in long-term care is older. There are a few younger adults there, but it's primarily the care of older adults. But we also see, there's particular specialty units in a hospital setting that are designed around the care of acute care of elderly patients. And then in community health, there's, primarily there are a lot of older patients on the caseloads of community health nurses in home care. So Gero nurses look after older adults in community settings, in long-term care settings, in acute care settings. We're everywhere.
Okay, so it isn't restricted to just dealing with issues of dementia or something like that. It covers the entire gamut of traditional medicine, but then just with an older population.
Yeah, absolutely. And there might be things that people do not think of, and these are also Gero nursing work as well. For example, in my lab, that we have Gero nurses working at technology product development. So how we work with robotic companies and implementing robots in the care homes. So people may not think about that, and developing mobile apps, like working with computers, art, science, all kinds of things. Yeah.
And obviously an increasingly important area as well as our general population continues to age and grow older, but then living where we do in the Fraser Valley and in the Lower Mainland, we have, an even higher percentage of older persons. So this does certainly seem to be an area that maybe should get a little bit more focus. And hopefully that's what this podcast will do. So I guess I'll kind of just sum it up by saying, how would each of you explain what the goal is, what you hope to achieve with these podcasts, and maybe who is the audience for this podcast?
I think the audience can be anybody who has an interest or who are curious about what do those nurses, work with older adults. What does that mean? What do they do? And what are the secrets that they have? And what are the stories behind their lives? There are so many, or maybe, people may find new things and surprises that they never thought that they may have an interest in. And they might want to say, whoa, that's really cool. And maybe I would like to enter Gero nursing. So we kind of want to inspire people.
Nice.
Yeah, I think really it could be, nurses, family members, older adults. I think it's a pretty wide range of folks that might be interested in hearing these stories, either because they've had some experience or perhaps they would, they're thinking about maybe this is an area of work that they'd like to get into. I think, and we're gonna kind of see how it evolves too, right? So as the world changes around us, there'll be new things that are going to come up in Gero nursing, and we'll be responsive to finding people to talk about those things. You mentioned the demographic changes that we're all facing, Darren. And, I look at this, and when I teach my students, yes, we are undoubtedly going to have a population that has a lot of older people, but I do not use negative descriptors about that, because I actually don't feel that's a negative or terrible thing. It just is. That's going to be the makeup of the demography of our population. So society will have a large group of older people. Instead of being afraid of it, instead of being angry, instead of being worried about old people sucking up all the finances and tax dollars, I think we need to just be realistic. Okay, we're going to have a lot of older people. How do we work with that? How do we make sure that their needs are well met? How do we partner with older people? I've been involved in a lot of research with you around intergenerational connections. We know that there's huge benefits for younger people connecting with older people. So I think there's lots that we can kind of touch on as our podcasts evolve and we respond to what's going on.
Excellent. It sounds fascinating. I'm going to be, sitting in the front row, waiting for these and enjoying them along with everyone else. So, Shelley, Lillian, I would like to thank both of you for taking the time to chat with me today and for explaining exactly what Gero Nurses Tales from the Front is and what it ultimately hopes to do. So thank you for being here with me and for yourselves.
Thank you so much, Darren.
Thanks, Darren. Great to talk to you, Lillian.
And I would also like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this. And if you can think of someone who we should chat with on an upcoming episode of Gero Nurses, then you can email either Lillian or Shelley. I imagine that you can easily find their email addresses just by searching their names in the university databases, and let them know if you're familiar with a nurse working in the gerontological field that might have some amazing stories to tell. We would love to hear those, and maybe they can be featured on an upcoming episode. And until our next episode, we hope you all stay safe, stay healthy, and remember, laughter isn't the best medicine. Medicine is. Talk to you again soon.